many places in this world where humans should not go, but what if those things reach your home themselves? From the deserted towns of the USA to the dense forests of the Appalachians, people are seeing a creature that can steal your face and your voice. Call them skinwalkers or mimics, these are not just old stories. This is the most terrifying truth of 2026. In today's video, we will see 3 such true stories and found footage that will force you to think, was that voice you just heard outside your room really from one of your loved ones? Watch the video until the end, because after watching clip number 1, maybe you won't be able to sleep peacefully tonight. Welcome to Mr.Hollow. Jake's house was located on the edge of a small town in the USA. Outside, a heavy snowstorm was raging, and the cold winds were crashing against the windows, creating a strange whistling sound. Jake's parents had been out of town for 2 days. The house was dead silent, so silent that Jake could clearly hear the sound of his own breathing. He was sitting in his bedroom playing games, wearing headphones, but suddenly, he felt like someone was calling him. He took off his headphones and listened closely. Piercing through the silence, a heavy voice came from the backyard. "Jake, son, come outside for a moment, help me." Jake's heart stopped for a second. That voice sounded exactly like his father's. The same depth, the same way of calling. But there was one problem. Jake had just spoken to his father on a video call an hour ago, and he was in a hotel 300 miles away from the city. Jake's palms began to sweat. He thought maybe he had misheard. He walked toward the kitchen and slowly pulled back the curtain to look outside. The garden lights were off, but in the whiteness of the snow, he saw a tall shadow standing behind a tree. That shadow wasn't moving. It was just frozen there. Then the same voice came again, but this time, the voice sounded slightly broken, like an old tape recorder playing. "Jake, come outside." Jake's legs began to tremble with fear. He immediately grabbed his phone and checked the live streaming of the CCTV camera installed at the back of the house. The camera was in night vision mode, showing everything in black and white. Jake looked at the screen and his scream almost escaped his throat. That shadow, which looked like his father, was now standing in the middle of the garden. But in the camera, it was clearly visible that the figure's hands were hanging below its knees, and its neck was bent at a strange angle. The most terrifying part was that there were no eyes on its face. Just 2 black hollow pits staring directly at the camera. That thing knew Jake was watching. Suddenly, the sounds from the garden stopped. Jake thought maybe that thing had left. But then, he heard a faint scratching sound at the main entrance of his house, like someone was rubbing their nails against the door. And then that voice changed. Now it was mimicking his mother's voice. "Jake, honey, open the door, it's very cold outside." "I forgot my keys." The voice was so innocent and so real that Jake's heart wanted to open the door. But just then a notification popped up on his phone. His mother had sent a photo in the group chat, showing her having dinner at the hotel. Jake understood. Whatever was outside, it wasn't human. It was a mimic, a skinwalker that mimics your loved ones to hunt you down. The national parks of the USA have always been mysterious, but this part of the Appalachian Mountains, there is a strange heaviness even in the air here. Thomas had been a forest ranger here for the last 10 years. His job was to protect the forest and find missing people. Thomas liked the solitude, but that night, the silence was a bit too deep. It was a cold October night, and the leaves of the trees outside were making a strange rustling sound. Thomas was sitting in his cabin writing an old logbook when suddenly, the old radio on his desk started making static sounds. Thomas was surprised because the signals had been gone for a long time due to the snowfall. From the midst of the radio static, a voice emerged. The voice of a small child. "Mommy, I'm scared. It's very dark here." The pen fell from Thomas's hands. In this desolate forest where there was no settlement for nearly 50 miles, Thomas picked up the radio and asked tremblingly, "Hello? I am Ranger Thomas. Where are you? Tell me your location." But there was no answer from the other side. Only the sound of the child sobbing and crying continued. Then suddenly, the radio turned off. Thomas turned the radio over and looked. Its battery was sitting on the desk. The radio had been running without a battery. His body went cold, trapped between fear and duty. Thomas grabbed his flashlight and stepped out of the cabin. The scene outside was terrifying. Wherever the flashlight's beam went, the trees looked like tall ghosts standing there. Thomas followed the child's voice and reached the middle of the forest. Suddenly he felt that the birds and animals of the forest had gone completely silent. This was the sign of the quiet, meaning a large predator is nearby. That child's voice now came from directly behind him. "Mommy." "It's behind me." Thomas turned around quickly and flashed his light. But there was no child there. Only a very old, rotting children's toy was lying on the ground. When Thomas moved the flashlight upward, he saw fresh blood marks on the high branches of the tree, as if someone had dragged something heavy up there. Thomas started running back toward the cabin. He could hear the sound of heavy footsteps behind him. It wasn't a human, because the sound of the leaves breaking was very loud. When he reached near the cabin, he gathered the courage to look back. The flashlight beam fell on an 8-foot-tall figure. That thing was standing on 2 legs, but its hands were touching the ground. Its face, it looked just like Thomas's own face, but its eyes were completely white and foul saliva was dripping from its mouth. That thing screamed in Thomas's own voice. "Thomas, stop, I'm lost." Thomas rushed into the cabin, closed the door, and locked all the bolts. That thing kept scratching the door all night and kept making the voices of Thomas's deceased friends. This story is about an old house in Pennsylvania. Mark and his younger brother Leo had recently moved into this house. They got the house quite cheap, but soon they understood why. Mark was a vlogger and had installed motion sensor cameras in every corner of the house. Everything was fine for the first few weeks, but then, every night at exactly 3:07 a.m., Mark started receiving notifications from the basement camera on his phone. The notification said, "Motion detected." But whenever Mark got up to check, the basement door would be locked from the inside and no one would be there. One night, Mark decided that he would hide in the basement himself to see what was actually happening. He set up his night vision camera in a corner and hid inside an old wardrobe. The silence was so deep that Mark could hear his own heartbeat like the sound of a hammer. At exactly 3:07, the basement light suddenly started flickering on and off. Mark saw an old iron door on the basement floor, which opened into the ground, moving slowly. From under that door, a strange growling sound was coming, as if some animal was imprisoned there. The door opened completely. Mark saw a thing emerging from the darkness. Its body was pitch black, but its skin was shining as if it were wet. The creature stood up on 2 legs, but its neck turned 180 degrees to look directly at the wardrobe where Mark was hiding. That thing started mimicking his brother Leo's voice. "Brother, come out. I'm scared." Mark's body went numb. Leo was sleeping upstairs in his room. The creature came near the wardrobe and placed its long, strange hand on the door. Mark closed his eyes out of fear. When he opened his eyes again, the thing was gone. But written in blood on the basement wall was, "I can smell your fear." If you have ever encountered something you couldn't explain, share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be featured in our next chapter if these stories chilled your bones. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Join the Mr. Hollow community. If you're brave enough to stay in the dark,